welcome to my channel, Sea of Infinity. In this video, I just wanted to briefly kind of discuss, some of the happenings and trials and tribulations or whatever that you may come across if you find yourself resonating with like a kind of like inner union, or like divine union, or like twin flame type journey, those sort of inward and outward type journeys. So I did want to just send out like a little reminder, that so often the reality we see outside of ourselves isn't necessarily the like, the truest or the most aligned or the most like sort of like, it can be a bit more of an illusory reality in that way compared to like your own inner reality, especially when you are going through such like shifts and journeys and what have you. It's like so often your outside world can become so like chaotic and discombobulated during such a journey that you can find that like that kind of consistent anchoring within yourself and find that like that consistent reality within yourself, rather than trying to like latch on to things around you, especially when things can be like moving and changing and chopping so much during such such dramatic parts of such a journey. And so even as well, if things in your outer reality aren't quite, matching up to like the truth you feel within or what have you, don't let that like deter you or throw you off. Keep the faith to what you feel and to what you feel your truth is, and just like keep aligned, to that. And then, eventually your reality will kind of, like form around that and like match to the frequency and, vibration that you're emitting out. Especially as well when things can get a bit confusing and such, what have you, if you're doing, like big like timeline jumps or shifts and, things get a bit choppy and changey on the outside world. It's really, really helpful just to align back to that, inner truth within as your like guidance and your little compass home through the dark sometimes. Use the little light of your heart to kind of shine the way home for you. And just a reminder as well that you are never alone on these journeys, as much as it can definitely feel that way sometimes. And so often, periods of like isolation and hermiting or having people in your life, like drop off or fall away or pass away can be such like a big and common theme on these sort of journeys, as your kind of like outer reality is kind of, reshaping in a way and realigning you to your more like truer reality in a sense, or like where your soul's guiding you to go, what have you. And so sometimes it's often like the timeline or what have you that you find yourself on may not even exactly be the timeline that you're meant to be on, or once you come into full union within yourself or with a partner or what have you, you may end up like being on a whole nother timeline by that point, which can require so many chops and changes on the way of getting there. You could almost think if you're a little shining light in like a sea of darkness, illuminating the movie of your life, and then all of a sudden you want to make a few scene changes down over here to shine your light into this movie. Sometimes moving from here to here, there's just like a bit of that that sea of darkness you've got to kind of swim and go through, that can make things in your reality really seem like they're chopping and changing and switching and swapping. And so when that is happening or occurring, it can make it a lot easier just to kind of ground yourself back within and just kind of keep grounded to within yourself, and kind of just try to follow that guidance from within, and not getting too caught up in like your head and thoughts and what's going on around you and what your ego's telling you, or any of that sort of stuff. And especially as well, sometimes making such big, timeline shifts or jumps or what have you does like require you to kind of be in that isolated hermit sort of state and sense, because, in some aspects you might not necessarily be taking those versions of the people in that timeline with you. Instead, you're kind of, jumping into a timeline where there's like, a new array, a new fractal of the version of them there. So it's like you kind of also have to you know, or maybe they just like aren't even, you know, so aligned in your reality in that timeline, or don't even exist in that timeline. Like there's so many, you know, factors. So it's, you know, so much easier to kind of make that clean jump, clean shift and sweep, if you will, if, you know, you've got everything kind of cleared out and away from you. So it's just you that's being portaled away, and you're not trying to like drag your whole old reality with you into the new one, you know. It's just you making that clean little boop, jump across, if that makes sense. So yeah, even though sometimes, you know, it can become a little overwhelming or confusing or what have you, you know, especially if you do find yourself a bit, you know, alone or isolated on the journey, so you don't even, you know, have anyone to kind of like tap in or check into about it. You know, that's why it's really good to just stay connected to, you know, whatever sort of spirit support or source or God, you know, whatever you feel aligned to, you know, and connecting to your inner state and inner guidance, you know, as everything does come from within in that aspect, you know, just trying to align with that, you know, go with the flow and do your best, and not be too overwhelmed and caught up in all those sort of like details, as they can really, as hard and difficult and, you know, as, you know, overwhelming as it can like be for our human, you know, emotions and nervous system, it is still just, you know, part of the process and part of the journey of all this, you know, rearrangement. And, you know, can definitely be confusing with all that movement, you know. So just aligning and following that path within, and just keeping that faith, and just, you know, with time and with moment, things will keep dropping, things will keep changing, and you'll just keep aligning more and more and more. So yeah, you know, don't fear, don't stress, just keep that faith, and know that even if it doesn't seem like it, you always are safe, protected, and loved. Okay, sending you so much peace, love, light, and blessings as always. Bye.